Welcome to the Inside Out Money Podcast.
Can't even recognize this place. Too many pieces of our past mistakes.
Hi, I'm Maggie, and I believe real change starts from the inside out. So let's work together to improve our money and our lives from the inside out. We will explore all things money and our relationship with it. Join me each week with a rotating set of co-hosts, friends, and interviews. Let's jump in.
It's time, we going round and round and round and round and round.
Hey, Liz.
Hi, Maggie. Hello. How are you?
I'm good.
You got a big smile on your face today.
Yeah.
You get new braces, bands? You trying to show them off?
No, just smiling. I don't know. Just your face. You know, it's good to see you.
Oh, it's nice to see you too. I always like it when we get to spend time together, and even better when we get to spend time together and talk about money.
Yeah, we just spent a while talking unrecorded, unfiltered. Someday we'll put those on Patreon or something, you know, where it's like for an extra $10, you can hear the 45-minute discussion before the podcast started recording.
Right. You can just hear us chit chat about our lives for the low price of
$7.99 a month. But for free, you get to hear us talk about life insurance today.
I'd pay for that.
Yeah. Welcome to Inside Out Money. This is a personal finance podcast. We are focused on redefining wealth from the inside out. Every week, I speak with a rotating set of co-hosts about a different financial topic to help you improve your financial mindset and tactics. Today, we have Liz, and we're going to talk about life insurance, like everything life insurance related.
Yay.
I'm excited.
I am too, because I had a real journey with life insurance from not understanding what it was at all to now feeling very savvy and comfortable and confident.
Did you have a policy? Outside of your work policy, did you have a policy when you didn't understand what it was?
No.
Okay. Do you now?
Yes. Well, I just remember thinking, like, I don't understand what life insurance is. I did a whole episode about this. We'll put a link in the show notes. But I remember thinking, why do I even need life insurance if I'm dead? Like, I don't need money. Like, that's how confused I was.
It's not for you.
I know. But
I love that you were like, if I'm dead, I don't need money. I mean, you could say, if I'm dead, I no longer care about what's happening in my absence. But yeah, you're right. You definitely don't need money if you're dead.
I thought it was like I literally thought it was a payout to you when you die. And I was like, I don't understand why anyone would need that. That's above me.
Oh my God. I love that you admitted that. And you have come a long way. And I've had a similar inaccurate thought about all sorts of financial topics. So no shame at all in that. I love that you admitted it.
To be clear, I was much younger.
Like 7? Or like 27?
Somewhere in between.
At what age did you realize the payout is for somebody else?
I know when I was younger, I just thought it was like the payout was for you and I didn't understand. And then I think I just didn't even think about life insurance until I was maybe 30. And then I learned what it actually was and is for. And then I understood it.
Well, I have such a bad memory, so I don't even know when I really understood or start. Like, I guess my first policy was, I'm trying to think if I had a policy before I got divorced. Because when you get divorced, you sometimes have to have a policy. It's like kind of like a requirement.
Yeah, I've heard that.
It often is written into, you know, a standard divorce decree or parenting plan or whatever to hold some level.
Just in case there's like another Liz out there who doesn't know what life insurance is.
Let's tell them what it is. From the person who once didn't know what it is. Why don't you tell them?
Right. Life insurance is not for you. Life insurance is for the people who rely on you, on either your income, your assets, or your labor. So you purchase a life insurance policy and it pays out if you pass away, and that money goes to a beneficiary that you choose. So the quintessential, like the kind of classic example is if you had a family with 2 adults, a couple of kids. If you have life insurance for the adults, if one adult passes away, the other adult receives that life insurance policy, and it helps with, like, maybe the person who passed away was the only person who was earning income. Maybe the person who passed away was doing all the housework and taking care of the kids and you need to pay someone to do that. maybe you were a 2-income household and now you can't afford your mortgage. So it's a payout that just helps you financially when the policy that for the person it was taken out on passes.
Yes. And then if that, both parents pass, like it then goes to the children. And so, there's a
Right.
whole beneficiary thing depending on kind of how your wills or trusts are set up. And we'll get into like some very specific tactical advice of how much we think you should have, how to shop for it, all of that. But I think the first thing that's worth clarifying is there's two core types of life insurance. Technically, there's more than two, but there's two that are like popular and common.
2 big buckets. Yeah.
Two big buckets. And they're whole life insurance and then what's called term life insurance.
Which one do you want? Which one's the good one?
All you need to remember is whole life insurance is bad. Term is good and what you want. It's funny. I was with a coaching client yesterday, actually, and they had a whole policy and we had already been through like a bunch of other things. And I felt like I was, being not negative, but I, went through the whole thing of like why you don't need a financial planner. And like, we had switched a lot of stuff over to them managing themselves. And then when I realized they had some whole policies, I was like, they like could tell from my face that it was like, I didn't think it was a good thing. And they were like, well, why not? And I was like, I don't know where to begin. Like, it's like hard to summarize, but we did in one of our episodes, we did a whole thing on why whole life insurance is bad. Oh, it was Avoid These Money Mishaps and Win Long Term, episode 69.
Nice.
So were you laughing at the 69?
Yeah.
Oh, you're like a middle schooler, Liz.
Uh,
My kids laugh at the number 69 now too. Okay. Okay, so whole versus term. Whole's bad, term's good. You want to explain why whole's so bad?
Well, high level, there's a reason that term life insurance is much more popular than whole life insurance. It's the better fit for most people. There are some real corner cases where whole life insurance may make sense, but for most people, term life insurance is less expensive and it's going to be exactly what you need. You don't need to buy anything more than that. But maybe we should talk about the difference, or maybe just what term life insurance, how it is and how it works.
Yeah. And I mean, the only other thing I would say about whole is it's not, and really you got to go back and listen to this other episode because we're not going to repeat it all here. Just to like double click on what you just said, Liz, I do think it's worth briefly explaining that beyond term just being better, for most people, like 99% of people, I would argue, this is my opinion. And, again, insert some sort of disclaimer here on like, this is my opinion. This is for entertainment purposes only. Do not take this as financial advice, even though this is a financial podcast. Whole life insurance for most people financially does not make sense. You end up paying a bunch of money. There's huge commissions on it. You don't get to control the investments it's in. It's like you would be better off just taking that amount of money in most scenarios and putting it into an index fund.
Yeah, that's what I've seen. I've seen it explained in a way that I found very digestible, which is whole life insurance combines life insurance and investing. And as a result, there can be more fees. There's a higher commission for the salesperson. And that for most people, you're better off choosing a simpler path.
Yeah.
Which is having a separate account for your investments and then separately buying term life insurance and not combining the two.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great point. And we'll talk about, term more because that's what we recommend. Term life insurance is affordable for most people and it's a small ongoing fee. Whole life insurance involves an upfront investment, a much larger fee ongoing. And yes, it pays out even if you don't die, right? You can cash it out at some point. But the point is, if you had done a cost comparison and you had just taken all that money that you put into this whole life insurance plan and you controlled the investments and you just put it in a low cost index fund, you would make more money. So really, just to recap, the reason we don't recommend whole life insurance is there's very high fees in it. You don't get to control any of the investments in it. There's also high fees within the investments.
These are like all your least favorite things, Maggie.
It's the same reason it's the same reason we don't recommend financial planners. We'll leave it at that. So let's get back to what we do recommend, which is term life insurance. And
yeah,
I think a big question is who needs life insurance? And there's times in people's life when they think like, oh, well, I don't need life insurance. But I do think really anyone who has anyone else that is depending on your income or your labor, which could be a stay-at-home parent or someone who cares for an ailing, cares for their kids or cares for their ailing parent or whatever it might be, likely needs a policy.
I think for a long time, life insurance was primarily marketed towards men because it was thought of as income replacement. And so women are more likely to be underinsured than men are. I did last year, I have a highlight on my Instagram profile at Liz Gets Loaded. I did a partnership with Quility for Life Insurance Awareness Month, and they shared with me all these really interesting statistics about how, again, life insurance has not been marketed towards women. Women are less likely to be insured because if you think of life insurance as just replacing the money that you got from the breadwinner, the income earner in the past, that's been more likely to be men. But to your point, Maggie, what you just said, if you have one, a parent who works and a parent who stays at home, if the parent who stays at home passes, you're going to have to pay someone to care for your kids, to cook your meals, to clean your house. Like if they were doing a lot of domestic work, that still needs to be replaced.
And we'll get into this later, but also in that caretaker example, I was just talking to someone about this. They have 4 kids and there's a stay-at-home mom. And I'm like, yeah, no, you need just as much insurance on her, because what happens all of a sudden if you lose your wife and you have 4 young children who emotionally and physically need you? So yeah, you could hire somebody, but do you want to? You actually might want to quit your job and take a few years off. And like, we'll talk about that when we talk about how much insurance you need, because you want to think about it as, sad as it might be, you want to play through these scenarios and think like, what would I want if something happened to my spouse on both ends? What would, each person need to feel secure and kind of taken care of? So yeah, I would argue, I think that is interesting that there's an actual stat that like women are often uninsured. And I think it's right. It's because there's also a history in, I was going to say this country, but the entire world, I'm sure, of undervaluing the labor that it takes to raise children, which is, very sad. And I think is getting, more and more credit these days.
Yeah. And I think your point really good too. So I used to be very dumb about life insurance. And then I was like a little dumb about it. Then I learned a little bit more about what it was and how life insurance works. But I also remember thinking, okay, both of the adults in my household are earning 6 figures. So we don't need life insurance because if one of us passes, surely the other person can continue to live and survive on their income. But without thinking, to your point, I'm sure I would want to take an extended amount of time off if the absolute worst thing I could ever imagine happened to me. And I've also come to enjoy that dual income lifestyle.
Yes. And it could be that what causes your partner to leave your life had some sort of, massive medical bills on the way out too, right? So there's all sorts of things you want to think about. And that's why, just to cover like why we think life insurance is important, because we really do think it's a product term life insurance is a product everybody should consider, is, you want that financial protection to cover your salary, to cover your home being taken care of. You, Liz, if something were to happen to your partner, you also might just want to make sure that your house mortgage is paid off and that, your house is taken care of. And that, if something happened to me, I'd want to make sure my kids' college was taken care of. And that wasn't a pressure that, Greg felt on his own or something. And same with the house. And so you want to make sure that, you're covering any debts or medical expenses that could have come up that caused someone to die in your life. So it could be income replacement. It could be that you want to, leave things for your kids. It could be that you want to deal with those medical expenses. And then, another thing that's just worth pointing out is a lot of people have life insurance at their employer and they think that covers them. And sometimes it's included, like a lot of people have some level. Sometimes it's like 1 times your salary or 2 times your salary. And that's included kind of quote for free, even though, your company's paying for it. Sometimes your company will let you like up that amount. You can pay extra for it. I always recommend you get a personal policy at as young of an age as possible, which we'll talk about more because that's when you're going to lock in the cheapest rates. But don't think of your work. I try to think of a work policy as like a little bit of bonus. I would not think of that as your core policy, right? Unless you're so young that you don't need to think about, and that there's nobody you need to think about caring for if something happens to you. But the thing about the work policy is, remember that when you leave that job, which could be unexpected, you could get fired tomorrow, that policy is usually gone. And sometimes a job will give you an opportunity to take over that policy, but that's not a typical approach, I don't think. And so the second that you leave that job, which might not be something that you chose, that policy's gone. And then if you try to get a policy at that point, you might be older, you might have more health issues, and it can get significantly more expensive. So I don't ever want people to count on their work life insurance policy as like ticking the box of having life insurance.
Yeah, I agree. When I was making a lot of content online about life insurance, I don't know if you follow, is it Stories with Misha? She's a children's book author. And she messaged me. She said, I was always told your work life insurance is probably just enough to put you in the ground.
Yeah, that's true.
Just enough to cover your own funeral costs.
Yeah.
And you need a separate one for like your actual needs with your family.
Yeah, that's a good way of thinking of it. Okay, so let's talk about how much people need and how long they need it for, right? Because the term life insurance means you're choosing a specific, length or term to have that policy for. But the point, I think one of the most important points is what I was saying earlier, which is you want to lock in life insurance when you are younger and healthier, because the rates go up significantly as you take more prescription and more medicines, as you've been diagnosed with more things. And it can just be I'll give you examples between even like the cost of Greg and I's medical insurance, and it is, significantly different pricing. And so I just encourage people to think about it, perhaps even, it's not even a bad thing to think about it before. If you know you're definitely going to have kids, lock a good price in and lock a good rate in when you're younger. Right. And at least shop around and see what the options are, because it can be significantly cheaper to lock a rate in when you're young.
Yeah, I think you might think of the age when health issues start to come into play as potentially older than it actually is. But as you hit your 30s and 40s, if you have to go on a long-term medication, if you have sleep apnea and you need to use a CPAP, if you have to take blood pressure medication, if you have to have surgery for some reason, like all of that is going to really dramatically change the rates that you get. So
if you take medicine for anxiety, I mean, there's like just little and big things that you think may not be a factor significantly. And then there are a lot of the pricing seems to be based on a multitude. So if you have like more, it's all of this is, actuaries that are, coming up and pricing these. But if you have a number of, if you tick enough boxes, I guess you get put into like a much higher risk category, regardless of what the boxes are. Sometimes it's just like, oh, you've got this many and you now have been put into a higher risk category.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So get it now, folks. Just to be clear,
get it while it's hot.
Maggie and I make $0 if you buy life insurance.
Yeah. We're not going to give you any we have no commission links or referral links to share with you on this topic.
Right. We're just telling you because we love you and we want your life to go as well as it can.
Until it doesn't. And then we want you to have life insurance.
And then we want your family's life to
Yes, then we want your family's life to go as well as it can. Exactly. As we do our own.
So when you're deciding how much of a policy you need, you can choose, basically any amount. You could choose $10,000 all the way up to millions of dollars. And you want to think about your financial obligations. You want to think about your goals. I would start by thinking of it less in terms of numbers and more in terms of like, what's your family situation? What's your goal? Are you the person who's earning a lot of income for your family? Do you need to think about that? Is your mortgage paid off? Would you want your family to be able to pay off your mortgage if you were to pass away? Do you want to fund college for your kids? How many, I was about to say, how many assets do you have?
How many kids do you have?
1, 2, 3 assets.
Yeah.
How much do you have in assets, right? If you're already sitting on a couple $1 million, you might need less life insurance than if you
are living paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah, had less invested or were in debt. Like, imagine the worst case scenario, you were to pass away. What amount of money would you want someone, like if you could imagine a check going to your partner or your family member who's going to get it, like how much would they need to continue to live life comfortably, take some time off and accomplish those goals? And then you can start putting dollars to those pieces. I've seen some other guidelines like 10 times your salary, 5 times your salary, and those are good places to start. But it's really going to be specific to your own situation.
Yeah. And I really think you should like make a list of the specific things like you just said. So, I had someone once give me this advice and it was a great way of thinking about it because I was heavily underinsured at the time, of thinking of like, if something happens. So I'm going to use an example of someone with kids here. If something happens, why not myself, right? Because I'm here. So if if something happens to me, I want to make sure that Greg can stay in this house. I want to make sure that all of the kids are taken care of for college. And I want to make sure that, he's not stressed dealing with a life without me, because that would be really stressful and sad, I'm half joking.
It would.
But it would, and vice versa, the same thing if something happened to him. And this should be a conversation with both people, right? Like I as the person receiving the benefit might be the one that gives Greg guidance on what I think is the right amount for him. Right. So you shouldn't be figuring this out in a vacuum. Like, you should be having a conversation with your partner, your spouse, a parent. If you have a parent that already needs a lot of care, an aging parent or something, or maybe not even aging parent, they just need a lot of care because of an illness they have or a situation they're in, then you should have a conversation. They should have a conversation with you about, the amount that would be helpful to them if something happened to you. Right. And so this isn't just you deciding in a silo. I think you want to talk to the people who are relying upon you, and figure out what would a comfortable life look like, and perhaps even a more comfortable life than you have now, because you're now distraught and you've lost a spouse and you're raising kids on your own. And, like, life's going to be much harder than it is now. And then the other thing I think of is you want to take that information and you want to mix it with understanding the cost for different policies at different amounts, which we'll talk more about shopping around. But ultimately, to me, it's and I'll use a personal situation. Like, I pay $36 a month for about $1 million policy. And that's a pretty good price, right? Especially considering I reshopped that in my 40s. So and you can reshop these plans, but I had a more expensive plan at some point and just hadn't done a lot of shopping around when I got my first plan and realized I could have a much cheaper plan. And so I got a much cheaper plan at an older age, which isn't always easy to do. If it feels like a nominal amount of money to go from $1 million policy to a $1.5 million policy, you're like, would I pay an extra $10 a month to, get another 500,000? You might be like, yeah, actually, that sounds good. Now, if you're a more expensive person to insure, that's when you might want to get a little bit more tighter on it. And so I do think there's a cost element to, you got to price these out. You got to know what different rates will cost. And when you do go through the pricing out process, you will get the prices of what's a 10-year policy at this amount going to cost me? And we didn't say this at the beginning, Liz, but this is important. When you're deciding on a plan, a term plan, there's a number of things. There's the beneficiary, but there's two big things, right? There's the number of years that you'll own that policy for, that it's valid for, which could be 10 years, could be 30 years, could be something in between. Some actually let you choose 27 years, a really specific number. But normally they're in big decade increments. And there's the amount that it pays out. And the price is going to be based on your own health and the length of the policy and the amount it's paying out, right? So if I'm really healthy, I have a 20-year term and it's $1 million, it might be, $36 a month. But if I then change it to a 10-year term, it's going to get cheaper, right? Or if I change it to $500,000 in insurance, it's going to get cheaper. And so, you'll get all the data on what the pricing will be, and you'll make a informed decision on, am I willing to pay this much for this peace of mind that, something that hopefully won't happen anytime soon happens. And I'll give you a real example. Mine is pretty inexpensive because of my health. And Greg has some pre-existing conditions that cause his to be 10 times the cost of mine almost.
Wow.
It used to be 10 times. He actually got it down recently, but I don't know, way more than it's 6 or 7 times the cost of mine.
Yeah.
And so we're a little more conservative with his.
That makes sense because it's so much more expensive.
Yeah, it's a really expensive. It's a meaningful few $1,000s a year cost. And we're now also early retired, so I'd argue we're kind of self-insured in a way.
Right.
But yeah, so it's a lot to think about. But
I think you touched on a piece I wanted to talk a little bit more about too, in terms of the term length. And when you talk about cost, a shorter term is going to be less expensive than a longer term, because from the insurance company's perspective, of course, it is much less likely that you are going to die in the next 10 years than in the next 20 years for everyone.
Yeah.
Right. More time just gives you more opportunities
Yeah.
to find your demise. And so one advanced maneuver that I have read about, I haven't done this myself.
I'd never heard of this before. This is exciting.
Listen, I told you I went from being very dumb about life insurance to now I'm so smart about life insurance. But there's a maneuver called laddering. So you could buy multiple policies of a different length because, like Maggie was saying, she feels like she and Greg are early retired now. So in a sense, they're self-insured. Like if you think that both of you could live off of your combined net worth for the rest of your lives now, then of course you would think that like one of you would be able to live off of your combined net worth for the rest of your lives, right? And in general, if things are going the way that we hope that they will, you have a higher net worth, you have more invested, you have more assets of your own as your life goes on. As my dad always, one of my favorite dad wisdoms is the more money you have, the less insurance you need.
Yeah.
Which is just such a beautifully simple way to say
simple.
it.
Yeah.
And so as you get older, if you have more money, you might feel like you need less life insurance because if you're sitting on, again, $1 million, $2 million in net worth, and one of you passes away, you might feel like your family, whoever relies on you, would be comfortable with that. Earlier in life, you might not have achieved that level where you feel like what you have would be sufficient. So what a laddering policy does is you would buy, I'll just give you an example. Let's say you bought 3 policies. So a 10-year policy for $100,000, a 20-year policy for $100,000, and a 30-year policy for $100,000. That means if you were to pass within the first 10 years, all 3 policies pay out, the 10-year, the 20-year, and the 30-year. If you were to pass 11 years into this plan, the 10-year policy would have expired. So now only the 20-year policy is paying out and the 30-year policy, the 10-year policy expired. But again, hopefully 11 years later, your net worth has maybe grown by that 100K, probably more. And so you have less of a need for life insurance. And then, again, if it's 25 years later, the 10-year policy has expired, the 20-year policy has expired, only the 30-year policy is in place. So you get a smaller payout. But again, ideally your own investments, your own assets have grown to a point where you feel comfortable having that smaller payout. And the benefit here is you can really kind of hack your way into just paying for what you need through the years rather than buying a 10-year policy for $300K and then like 10 years later being like, okay, now I want to change it because my financial situation has changed and I want to go buy a new policy. Again, to underscore Maggie's point, now you're 10 years older, you got 10 years more of health issues dinging you on the premiums. So
that's super cool. I never would have thought to do that, but it's brilliant and definitely an advanced maneuver. So
I've come along. I told you I've come along.
I know. I mean, it actually makes me want to like switch up and think about like what I'm doing, even just to like save on my $36 a month,
Yeah. When you're thinking about a term, again, laddering is like advanced. I haven't done, I just know it of what it is now. And I think it's cool. It's not something I've actually done.
I've also never done it. Just learned about it now.
But when you think about how long of a term you want to purchase for, you want to think forward to what kind of financial situation you expect yourself to be in the future. If you are, I'll just use an example. By the time I am 65, for example, I expect to have all of the money that I need for the rest of my life. I expect to have enough that if I were to pass away, my partner would live very comfortably on what was left. And so at that point, I know that I won't need life insurance. Today, I feel like we're close to that. And so I purchased a policy. Actually, I got to go look at how far into it we are, but I purchased a policy that was a 10-year policy because in my mind, I thought once we get to the end of that 10 years, we should feel comfortable being essentially self-insured. Again, going back to Dad's wisdom, the more money you have, the less insurance you need. And I expect by the time we reach the end of that term, I'll feel comfortable not having life insurance.
Yeah. And that's the example I gave too of like the, depending on what you're paying, right? Like I'm paying so little right now. I don't technically need to be insured. Well, actually I do because of my divorce decree, but even when that expires, I'd be like, well, I don't need to, I could cancel it, but it's such a small amount of money in the end to like give that additional peace of mind to my family. And if it was more, like Greg's is a big enough amount that I'm like, that's not worth it. We're covered. We're basically self-insured, like you're saying. And so I think a lot of it is just that, sort of, you got to weigh a few different factors in your head, right? Of like, what is it costing you? And so speaking of what it costs, this is a cool stat you shared that I didn't know.
Yeah. So again, I worked with a company, and to be clear, they did pay me to talk about their company last year. They didn't pay you to do this podcast. I am under no further obligation to say nice things about them. I'm just saying nice things about them for free because I like them. The company was named Quility, kind of like quality, but with an I in the middle. So Quility, I worked with this lovely woman named Carlin to do a campaign about the importance of life insurance. And one of the statistics that Quility shared with me was that 75% of people overestimate the cost. So when they go in and get a quote online, it comes in lower than what they expected. When I was working with Quility, they said their plans can be as low as $18 a month. I just looked it up yesterday, average cost, and I found something from Aflac that said the average
Aflac.
cost.
Sorry.
Aflac, exactly, the duck.
Sorry, when I hear Aflac, I'm just like I really have. It's hard for me to focus and not. I was terrible in school. I was like the person that was constantly in trouble in class because of things like.
Did you get okay?
I got in trouble for talking because I'd like the teacher would be teaching and she'd say like Aflac and I would be the one that would like blurt out like a duck like I just did to you.
Aflac.
Yeah, I just can't. It's like I can't stop myself. I'm like watching it happen. I'm like, why are you doing that? What are you saying? What's wrong with you?
Relatable. I feel like there's a lot of memes about like, were you the oldest daughter who had a perfect report card, except you got points off for like talks at appropriate time?
That was me. I was like straight A student, but got banned from the class trip because I got too many conduct checks for talking. I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't like, vaping in the bathroom, just talking.
Relatable.
Just talking.
Relatable.
Okay, well, back to Aflac.
Wait, I always think we have this running joke in my house because when I was in 4th grade, my teacher filled out my report card, and then there's a spot where you write notes, and she wrote, "What a vivacious little girl!" exclamation point. And at the time, I thought that was such a nice compliment.
I think I would take that as a compliment. Vivacious? I love it.
I know, but now I look back and I'm like, yeah, I talk too
Who
much.
won't shut the F up? Yeah.
And every time I feel like I'm getting too rowdy, like
I'm going to start.
Like, what a vivacious little girl.
You are a vivacious. You're a vivacious young woman. You're not a little girl anymore, but you're still vivacious. I want to look up the definition of vivacious now. Vivacious.
I think it's lively.
Attractively lively and animated, typically used of a woman. I feel like that's a positive word. Full of life, spirited, high-spirited, effervescent, animated, lively. Some of the synonyms.
I mean, I think it was
not
a
meant
compliment. And I think it was, how sometimes you want to give someone feedback and there's the way you might say it when you're not talking directly to them, if you're talking about someone else, and then to their face, you might describe it slightly differently.
Yeah.
I think vivacious was my 4th grade teacher's way of saying.
Oh, that was nice.
She's a lot.
Yeah.
Anyways, Aflac.
Back to Aflac. I don't know how we got here, but I'm pretty sure it was my fault. And you're so vivacious, so it's like the
I liked
mix.
when you shouted Aflac at me.
Okay. What did Aflac say?
Aflac's website said the average cost for someone who's 40 to buy a $250,000 policy with a 10-year term was $52 for women and $70 for men. Now, we know your mileage may vary. Maggie just gave her own example of having $1 million policy of less than that per month, less than $50 per month. This is saying that on average, if you wanted that $1 million policy at 40, it would cost you $200 a month. So you really do need to shop around because you will get different rates. It's going to depend on your own circumstances, your own health, and shopping around. Like it's all algorithms.
Yeah. And it's not quite as formulaic. Like you just did 50 times 4 and said $200 a month. The price, if you like get a price, it's never that like, it's not that perfectly priced. So it's like, $1 million policy does not cost 4 times the amount of there's a little bit of like, I don't know, economies of scale perhaps, but it's a lot more expensive. It's probably, 3+ times more expensive. So price it out. My biggest thing would be, the prices are going to vary. Your health, the health, literally like the prescriptions you take. I mean, just everything impacts it, right? Whether you have asthma, like Greg has asthma, there's just a bunch of things that like, if you get enough ticks, it really can change the price of it. But that's why I say like, my advice is do it when you're younger and you are taking fewer things, I guess. Yeah, the price can vary wildly that, like the everything's an average, but like I'm below average. Greg is above average in terms of what we're paying here. Yeah. So I think it's more when you choose and shop for a plan, which we'll talk about now, my advice would be get lots of different prices because you can see some wildly different, just like car insurance and homeowners insurance, like different people will rate your risk differently and charge you differently. And though there might be some trends, you can still shop around and see some pretty large differences in terms of what you're quoted.
Mm-hmm.
And I just encourage people to shop around like they would do with anything.
I keep hearing shop around in my head, like shop around,
shop around, shop around.
Shop up and get down.
Oh, we should do a life insurance song parody
absolutely should.
That should be like our next endeavor is we take, I know someone who does this, but not about, I want to do it about like financial stuff. I want to like rewrite, jump around to how you should shop around for life insurance. Oh, this is like we're going to need to wait for you to early retire to maybe have time to focus on this endeavor.
100%.
It's right here logged in my bucket, my retirement.
That gives me something to look forward to.
Yeah. There you go. Okay. I don't remember what we were talking about. Shopping around.
Of course.
Okay. So Liz, how should we shop around?
So look at a couple different places to get quotes. You can, listen, I can tell you, you can definitely start by Googling buy life insurance and you'll get 1,000 websites of places who are trying to entice you to take your business to them. I would start with wherever you have any existing insurance policies through. Like if you can get it through different financial institutions offer different products. So if you already bank or have other insurance products through a company, check and see if they have life insurance.
Which is where I started. Like that was my very first plan as I was already had all my other stuff with Allstate. So I was like, I'll go to Allstate. And I will say start there, but Allstate, I had a policy for like 5 years that was heavily overpriced compared to what I then learned I could get elsewhere.
Yeah.
So start
because
there.
You can shop around.
I know. Start there, but don't end there.
I think my point being, it can be really overwhelming. There are probably not literally, but figuratively 1 million places that you could start when it comes to getting life insurance. So one place might be to start where you get other insurance or you get other financial products. You might even look at your company's plan. Hey, my company offers this small life insurance policy through New York Life. So I'm going to give them a call and see if I can add on to that. Or you can start with some of the online tools. I tested out Quility. I thought they were great. There are other similar companies out there that are like that. Ask your friends ask your smart friends.
Can I be honest right now, Liz?
Yeah.
I cut and pasted the lyrics to Jump Around into the bottom of our show notes, and I've started rewriting them for a song about life insurance. And I sort of quit paying attention, but I want to get back on track here. But I got the whole first verse rewritten.
I thought when you said like, can I be honest? And you were so serious. I thought you were about to be like, Liz, I don't think you're explaining this very well.
I don't even know what you were talking about because I was so focused on rewriting these lyrics and they're like rhyming. I came to die. Battle me. That's a lie. I won't ever buy life. Punk. Get better back. Sorry. Oh my God. Okay.
We've gone round the bend.
I know. Round the bend where we need to bring it home. But you really, I'm sorry. Go back to what you were talking about. I'm sure it was important and good. And
I was saying that I think it can feel overwhelming when you look around and there's a ton of options that you can start with shopping for life insurance. So start by anchoring to something you know. Start with a financial institution where you already have other products. Start with the company that your employer uses. You might already have a small policy, whoever that provider is. Start with if you have a friend who bought life insurance and they had a good experience and they're savvy, right? Like someone who knows about, like if you're friends with me or Maggie, I would tell you to use Quility. Like Maggie would tell you, who's your policy through now?
Oh, I should know that, right?
That's okay. You're fine.
I don't actually remember. All I know is I got a policy. I hope somebody knows who it's with.
As long as you have it written down somewhere, it's completely fine.
Wait. It might be with Amica. Amica. Is it Amica or Amica? We've been through this.
I think it's Amica.
That's why you need a name like Aflac. so you can remember it.
Right.
I can't remember now. I'm going to come back to this. This is ridiculous. It used to be with Allstate. It was really through like Lincoln Life Insurance or something.
Yeah. And there's, it's the kind of thing you can buy it through an agency or an aggregator. You can also go directly to the carrier to purchase it.
Yeah, I mean, there's all these companies now that are aggregators that have low cost plans that won't actually insure people with a lot of pre-existing conditions. So, I mean, there's just so many options. There's like Ethos, Ladder, Gerber Life, which is like a baby food company, has a product
Oh,
called
yeah.
Fabric now.
My credit union is always sending me a letter. Like,
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's a good
did
place
you know
to
you can get life
start.
insurance through us?
There's
So,
Policy Genius. I mean, there's a ton of companies. And like you said, I would just like go to some of them. And there's
mhm.
I keep hearing about Lemonade, which I like tried using one. It's definitely like an aggregator one, but
Yeah.
there's so
As
many
you're doing
things.
that, again, if you know that you want term life insurance, make sure that that's what you're selecting as you're going through and getting your quotes. There are sometimes whole life insurance will go by other names. So they'll call it like term whole life or something, or universal life, indexed life. Sometimes it's called infinite banking or variable life. Sometimes they'll just throw the word term in it as a marketing tactic. And so just be aware as you're shopping around for things like that.
Yes. My policy is with USAA.
Oh,
I should have been able to remember because when I realized we could get access to it through Greg's dad, who was in the military for a period of time, I shopped around and I got a much better price through them. And then I thought I could do the same with all our insurance, but they were not cheaper for all my other insurance products. They were just significantly cheaper for life insurance.
interesting. Yeah. I think USAA is a great company if you have access to
they're
that.
awesome. I agree. So like start there if you have access to them. So let's talk about what the process looks like once you so you're going to shop around and you're going to do all these things. Just to be clear, here are the types of things you'll need to consider as you are shopping around. You are going to have to answer a lot of personal questions about what medications you take, about pre-existing conditions, about if you feel are there questions in there about like depression and anxiety? I know there's questions about if you take medicine for them.
It's real nosy.
It's real nosy. That's a good way of saying it. It's real personal. You know, it's like when you're giving blood and they ask you like every sexual position you've ever been in. And I'm like, okay, I don't think so.
Where
Like,
are you giving blood?
I don't know. They don't ask you that, but they ask you so many questions. Like, have you had sex with someone who's had sex with someone who's had sex? And I'm like,
Yeah, just be ready to go full.
Yeah, be ready to open the
full
kimono.
disclosure.
Yeah,
and don't tell a fib because
I mean, they'll in real time, like you'll be answering questions. Like I one time was trying to get some quotes for Greg and I didn't know all the answers. I was not trying to fib. I didn't know the answers. And so I couldn't list every prescription. And then it like prompted me for something because they were in the background checking prescription history. So, I mean, some of them do have connections to, because
like
to different medical databases. And they're doing it in a way that doesn't violate HIPAA, but they're also that you've given them your social, they're checking things. And so they were prompting me to say like, you know, have you ever had like taken asthma medication, you know, and like, the questions were like you said, real nosy. And so you're going to have to answer a lot of questions about your medical history. Many of them also require an in-person medical test. Sometimes they'll come to your house. Sometimes they'll send you to a lab. You need to do a blood test. They're checking for everything from certain medical conditions, I think, to like drugs and other things. And there's many now that don't require a medical test. So I've taken ones where I did have to take a medical test. And then my more recent, USAA did require a medical test. But Greg's got a policy now, and I can't even remember who it's with, when he reshopped it. And it didn't. Oh, it's actually with Amica. Jeez, you just told me. Amica.
I think it's Amica.
Thanks. I have a problem remembering pronunciations of things. It's like a real thing diagnosed by me. He didn't have to do an in-person medical test for that. He did have to provide medical records. I think they did a pretty detailed confirmation with his primary care doctor, but he didn't have to do an in-person test. Then there's other ones where if you're particularly young and healthy, they don't require any of that. And that's how they market themselves. They actually say they don't require a lot of that, but not everyone will qualify for that. And so it really, I mean, it is the sort of thing, like even more so than like car or home insurance, that you really need to shop around on, because there's a lot of nuances to what they will require, what hoops they will require you to go through. But most of the time, life insurance is it's not like car insurance. You don't just call up a company and have insurance an hour later. There's double checking they do where they talk to your doctor, where they get some medical records, or where they require a medical test or something like that, depending on the term and amount of your policy and your own health situation. So be ready, be mentally prepared for that it is it can be a bit of a process. a nosy process.
It's a nosy process. It's a complex process. It's not a difficult process. It's not confusing. You just have to take the time.
Yes. And you have to be very open about everything medically in your life, because that's how they're deciding how much to charge you, is based on your risk of death.
But you can do it. Like, I believe in you.
Yes, exactly.
And then you have life insurance.
Then you have life insurance. And I was going to share some of my Jump Around lyrics, but
all right, let's go out with that.
They're not that good. I only got one. I don't have like the actual chorus part with the shop around, which I feel like would be the best part of the song. So that's it. We'll probably
shop around, scroll up and scroll down.
Oh, I love that. Hold on.
Open a new tab and scroll down.
Oh my God, I love the shop around, scroll up, and scroll down. I'm in the cream of the crop. I rise to the top. Those are the original lyrics. I'm trying to work on like what they'll be. I'm in the cream of my life.
Mm-hmm.
But if I see a knife, I'm going to need life insurance.
I'm going to need life.
I'm going to need term life. I'm going to need that term life.
Yeah, exactly. Wait, I love it. Brilliant.
Okay, there's a lot to work with there. We'll follow up soon on a part 2 to this. We could answer all your questions about life insurance, and we will sing our song for you. Okay, well, this is like a typical episode for us. I think you got some information about life insurance and a lot more that you didn't sign up for. And I hope you'll come back. We really appreciate you listening. It might not seem like we know your time is limited and valuable, but we do. And we appreciate you spending it with us. And look, we try to make this enjoyable. We want to make it enjoyable. We think talking about money and financial stuff can be fun. And so we try to not take ourselves too seriously and have a good time with it. So if you've enjoyed this episode, we love it.
I know I have.
I've enjoyed myself. We love it if you want to leave us a written review on Apple Podcasts. We really appreciate it.
We really do. It's really, they say that it helps other people find the show. Maybe that's true, but mostly it's just good for our own ego.
Mostly makes us happy. Yeah. I don't have a job. Nobody tells me nice things anymore. So
you're doing a great job. Maggie.
Thanks, Liz.
I don't think listeners know how much work goes into coordinating schedules alone with so many different people, and having the running list of show topics and when they're going to go live and getting all the notes together and the links and the notes and the editing. It's actually a big effort, and I think you make it look easy, but you do it very well. I have my own podcast, and it's much simpler because I don't have to schedule with anyone, because I just sit here and talk to myself. And I still feel like it's not, what am I trying to say? I don't put as much effort in.
But it's still time consuming. Was that your point?
And it's still time consuming. Right. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I like your podcast. It's called Liz Gets Loaded. If anyone wants to go check it out, there's always a link in the show notes to it.
I love it. I know. I imagine the Venn diagram of people who listen to Inside Out Money and the people who listen to Liz Gets Loaded, like, it's more overlap.
I was going to say, I think it's getting the circles are I was about to say concentrating on each other. The circles are closing in on each other.
They are. But I always I got just a nice DM from someone the other day who was like, "Hi, I just wanted to let you know I found you through Inside Out Money and I just started listening and I love it." And I got a note from your mom the other day.
Oh God, what did it say?
I don't remember. She's DM'd me twice. Once she wanted like the link to something we had talked about, and then I can't remember.
I'm impressed she knows how to DM you.
She did great. She DM'd me and she sent me a really nice message and she signed it Maggie's mom.
Oh, that's cute.
So anyways, I'm just saying that you do a good job with this podcast, and first of all, you just treat it very professionally. And second of all, I think the impact that you have with people is meaningful. So thank you for doing that.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for saying that.
Anyways, leave us a review, share this with a friend. We love you so much.
Yes. Awesome. If you ever want to text us or leave us a voicemail, you can do that at 404-981-3370, or you can DM either one of us on Instagram like my mom does to Liz. Okay. Thanks, Liz. We did it.
We did it. Yeah. All right. See you later.
You want to sing Jump Around on our way out? Shop around.
We're shopping round and round and round.
Even better. Okay, that's the real out. You're really good at this. When we start this venture, it's going to do so well. Send us a voicemail if you're still, or a text if you're still listening to, if anybody listened to this part so we know that like someone's out there. Sometimes I'm like, I think a lot of people quit right when we get to the end where we're like, you know, reading the
Yeah, we're like,
message.
thanks for listening. We appreciate your time. They're like,
But yeah,
next.
some of the best stuff happens, you know, in the midst of us attempting to read 3 sentences out loud. Okay.
All right.
It's
We did
been
it.
great. We did it. Bye, Liz.
Bye.